At Sierra, discover great deals on top brand workout gear, like high-quality walking shoes, which might lead to another discovery.
40,000 steps, baby. Who's on top now, Karen?
You've taken the office step challenge a step too far. Don't worry, though. Sierra also has yoga gear. It might be a good place to find your zen. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
Raise the rudder! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an Enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. Start converting your B2B audience today. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started today at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
The Jack Welch Management Institute at Strayer University helps you go from, I know the way, to I've arrived with our top 10 ranked online MBA. Gain skills you can learn today and apply tomorrow. Get ready to go from make it happen to made it happen and keep striving. Visit strayer.edu/Jack Welch MBA to learn more. Strayer University is certified to operate in Virginia by Chev and has many campuses, including at 2121 15th Street North in Arlington, Virginia.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast with Steven Toplis.
Hello and welcome to the 1865 match report as we look back on events at Turf Moor, where Forest picked up the first point of the Ange Postecoglou era with a 1-1 draw against Burnley. On the face of it, this was a decent point for Forest up against a newly promoted side on their home turf, where they'd only lost once since Forest beat them on the final day of the 23-24 season. However, the Reds were left frustrated by missed chances, which could have seen them win the game comfortably. I'm Steven Toplis, and I'm joined by George Edwards for this match report. Hello, George. You were at Burnley yesterday. At least the point wasn't too bad, just perhaps the ground itself left a lot to be desired.
Yeah, we were speaking off. I absolutely hate Turf Moor, and for the 3,000 that were there, you'll understand why, because there's one toilet each for men and women. There's one entrance and exit to the stand. It feels like it's falling apart and wasn't advertised as restricting view, but there was a massive pole in the way of the goal for me. So, not the best viewing experience. But in terms of the point, I think a lot of fans are not happy about it. But as you mentioned, obviously, that they lost to Liverpool last week at home. But before that, they hadn't lost to us. They went a whole championship home season unbeaten. And they're a very good side under Scott Parker. Yes, if we were with Nuno, I think we'd have expected to win and we probably would have won. But we're still adapting to Ange. And I think if we'd have lost, then maybe you have to have question marks about the fact that we're changing things and it's still not good enough to beat a newly promoted side. But we've got a point. We looked the better side throughout. We created most of the chances. Dubravka made some decent saves that people were saying he was heroic. I think he made a lot of saves, but they're saves you'd expect a Premier League goalkeeper to make. But we still troubled him more than they troubled Sal's. And at the end of the day, you can see things are changing under Ange. His subs made a difference. And we've not lost the game. A point away in the Premier League, wherever you go, it is hard-earned and well-earned. And, you know, we're not at a point of the season. Obviously, every point matters, but it's not like things hinge on getting points at this stage. It was just about not being embarrassed, which we weren't, and coming away with some credibility. I think it means that we probably do have to beat Sunderland, just so we're not on a sort of rotting run under Ange, 4 games, because Brexit is going to be difficult. So it could be 4 games, no wins, no clean sheets. And that Brentford game does seem a long way ago if you haven't beat that Sunderland game. But, you know, I think the point is positive and there's certainly things to be negative about. But on the whole, I don't think you can get too down so early into Ange's tenure.
Yep, still a long way to go. He's only been in the job a week, hasn't he? So very much early days. Let's have a look at the team news. And there were a few changes from the Forest side that lost at Swansea in the League Cup in midweek. The most interesting was there was no Murillo still. Postecoglou did say that if he didn't make it for this Burnley game, he should be fit for the Europa League match against Betis on Wednesday. But we had first Premier League starts for Douglas Luiz, Alexander Zinchenko and Delane Bakwa. So the Forest team was this: Matt Sells in goal, a back 4 of Neco Williams, Nikola Milenkovic, Morato and Alexander Zinchenko. In the midfield, Elliot Anderson, Douglas Luiz and Morgan Gibbs-White. Delane Backwet and Dan and Doy on the wings, and Chris Wood on his own up top against his former club. And I don't think it was too much of a surprise, George, that there were going to be changes from the Swansea game. Of course, there were many changes made for that game in the first place. But anything stand out about that starting 11 for you and the side that Ange went with?
I'll be honest, that's exactly what I wanted to see pre-match. That is to a player, the lineup I wanted to see. I think obviously Zinchenko was always going to play his first Premier League game, and with the fact that I think Forest have found a loophole that they can somehow get Zinchenko now into the Europa League squad. There's no real need to play Savona when you've got a sort of proven Premier League left back who I think is going to be quite important to the way Ange plays. And we'll get onto his performance, which I wasn't a huge fan of. But from the start, I think that was always going to be the way. Morato, to be fair to him, I think had his best game for Forest. I think maybe he's found his level playing against Swansea and Burnley, looking all right in the last two games. But he was solid. And then, I think Louise, was always going to come in for Sangare if he was fit enough. Obviously played his first football on Wednesday this season. But I think he's, a proven Premier League player. He's played in loads of different systems. So him adapting to Ange's football, I think, would go better than somebody like Sangare. And then there's a lot of calls for Chris Wood not to be in the lineup. And I know he didn't look great yesterday. He was backing into them, winning headers. I still don't think it's the time to drop Chris Wood. He's scored 20 goals last season. And regardless of whether you're going to play a new style of football that doesn't suit him, you find a way to produce chances and make a goal threat like him be effective. So I'd stick with Wood for the foreseeable future. And I think Hudson-Odoi, I think it was time he was taken out of the 11, to be fair. I think Odoi has looked better on the left side. So I think it was the perfect game to give Odoi a game from the left to start with. And then if you're choosing somebody to play on the right between Backwell and Hutchinson, of the minimal minutes they've both had, Backwell probably looked the most threatening, certainly played quite well against Swansea. So no surprises with the lineup. I was very happy with the way Ange set up, and obviously didn't take long for that to prove on the pitch.
Yeah, only 2 minutes on the clock when Forest took the lead, and it came from a corner from the left-hand side. Swung in by Douglas Luiz, it fell to Neco Williams at the back post. He comes in and lashes it. First time, it takes a nick on the way through, flies into the roof of the net. Neco off the mark for the season, and a perfect start for Forest, George.
Yeah, really good. And I liked the fact that Forest kicked off and they kept the ball and they tried to play. Often teams, I think most teams really, get the ball, boot it long out for a throw-in or for a header just to get it away from their own goal. But maybe it's a new thing under Ange. I think Burnley touched the ball twice in that sort of... They scored just before 2 minutes. So in the first 120 seconds, they cleared it out for the corner. And then from the corner, they tried to clear it and Neco tapped it in. So it was a really good start from Forest, a bit of intent and trying to show the way they're going to play. So I really liked that. It deserved that from the way that they showed impetus in the game. And then you're thinking, we're going to kick on now. Burnley, I think, was shocked by that. You think back to their last home game when they fought so well for 90 minutes and then conceded a goal in the 96th minute. They come out against Forest fit and firing and they concede within 2 minutes. So you're thinking, right, we can get at them now. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. But as starts go, you couldn't ask for much more.
Yep, a perfect start for Forest. How did they carry on after that goal went in? Did it kick Burnley into life, or were Forest still in control and looking the stronger team?
I think we had control, I think it gave us a bit of confidence. We got on the ball a lot more. Burnley, we're struggling to get possession, especially high up in Forest territory. I think the only time they really had joy was when Forest got overloaded and on the transition with the system that we're playing with Zinchenko in midfield, which means Neco shuffles across and we look quite narrow defensively. There was countless balls from the sort of right across to the left channel where Jadon Anthony really had a free run at Neco Williams. No fault of himself, but it was because, like I say, he was tucking in. Every time they got the ball, Kyle Walker got the ball, he just drove it out to that left side. And they always had a man over there because Williams is cutting inside. So that was the only real threat Burnley had. But no, I didn't feel like Forest were threatened at all by Burnley. I thought they had relative control. And, I was hoping they'd push on and really show some impetus to get that second goal quickly after the first, just to settle the nerves and give them a foothold in the game. And obviously Burnley scored midway through the half. They didn't really score from a position where they were dominating Forest. It was just Forest, for the first time in the game, really couldn't get out. Burnley capitalised on that, kept them pressed for 2 minutes and scored from that. So, the start was okay. And even when we conceded, which we'll get onto, I think Forest always looked the most threatening side, but you can't really give a Premier League side, any side, a sniff of goal because they've got the quality of players to take it.
Let's talk about that equaliser for Burnley then. And it came from across from the left-hand side from Hartman. And even though the first header, Forest won it, the ball fell kindly for Jadon Anthony at the back post to guide home his third goal of the season, also his third goal in as many Premier League appearances against Forest. So he likes playing against us. Despite the efforts on the line of Alexander Zinchenko, who tried to scramble it away, he couldn't. The ball trickled over the line and it was 1-1. On the face of it, George, it's a disappointing goal to concede. It's scrappy. It looks like a goal where Forest could have done better. Would you agree?
100%. Yeah, we give the ball away, don't we? It's Salzman, Zinchenko in a bit of doubt. And then it's just shocking. I mentioned in the sort of the opening that I wasn't a fan of Zinchenko's performance, and this was the start of it, really. The ball comes in from the left side and he gets absolutely nowhere near it. I don't know if he even jumps. I don't know whether he wins the header or not, but he's absolutely overpowered. And for a left-back who's had 150 appearances for Man City, 2 seasons at Arsenal, you'd expect far better from somebody like that when a ball coming in over his head. He knows there's going to be someone behind him. I think he's got to do so much better with that. You know, the clearance, there's not much really he could have done, maybe anticipated it a bit quicker, but he got across, did his best, couldn't get it away. I can't fault him for that, but I think that header was just abysmal, and that was the start of a very poor defensive performance from him. Obviously, he plays the inverted fullback role very well. He's almost like an Ange player in the way he's been brought in on deadline day. Ange comes in a week later and then suddenly he's given this position where he's probably played half of his career at Man City and Arsenal. But yeah, on the ball, brilliant, finds Luiz well, finds Anderson well. But defensively, it's an absolute car crash. And there's a reason why he's not playing for them clubs anymore. He's clearly got the ability. But defensively, he might as well not be there because Morata, I think, did so well to compete because Zinchenko's non-existent. The winger gets the ball, goes past him so easily. Balls come in. He's very hit and miss in the air. And obviously with him going into midfield, like I say, it leaves us short on the other side. So Neco is often tucking in and leaving spaces out wide. So I like a lot of the things I'm seeing from Ange, but I really can't get behind this inverted fullback thing. It might work better with someone like Ole Reiner. Obviously, I've got worries about his stamina, which I don't think he'll be able to play at 90 minutes playing this way. But he's far better, well, maybe similar on the ball, but far better defensively to cover. But with Zinchenko in there, I really do worry in big games as to how we're going to cope. You know, think of him against Salah. We're going to get absolutely torn to shreds.
I think teams are going to target those areas of the pitch as well, hitting long balls over the channels and exposing Forest and the likes of Zinchenko and Neco Williams if he gets pulled inside as well. So I think we've got to get used to that under Ange. That might be a slight negative of Ange ball, is it? But you want to come in, George?
The thing is, as well, they obviously invert. They don't offer any support for the wingers. I mean, I thought Ndoye had a very poor game and Bakwa struggled to influence as well. But there's never... Nico did a few in the second half towards the end when we're going for the winner. But there's no overlapping runs either. So you lose that threat. Ndoye constantly was doubled up on, had to come back inside. Same for Bakwa. So, you know, I know it's a system that Pep's used before and gone away from and used at Tottenham. And it might come to work, but I really just think this inverted fullback thing offers nothing, because often when Zinchenko goes inside, Douglas Luiz then comes out of midfield and goes to sort of stand on the left. Well, what's the point of that when you're just losing your midfielder in the pitch? And it also means that someone like Morgan, that the midfield's so congested, then he can't get on the ball and he's having to come deep or drop out wide. I just really think the inverted fullback thing takes so much away from our strengths. And obviously it's something that Ange believes in, but with the players you've got, I think you've got to adapt to what's in front of you. And you know, the biggest attacking threat we've got is Morgan Gibbs-White. You need to give him space, give him service. And I really think flooding the midfield with Zinchenko, isolating the wingers and making us a liability defensively is not worth it.
And we'll wait to see if this evolves and the team gets more, as the team gets more used to Ange's way of playing, and whether those points that you raised, George, will be sorted out in time.
I hope I'm wrong. I hope so. And I do hope that, you know, the Premier League quality that we have shines through.
But I think the positives of what Ange is trying to do were evident in this game, particularly some of the moves that Forest put together in that first half after the Burnley equaliser. The first one was a really nice first-time passing move between Zinchenko, Anderson and Ndoye and Morgan Gibbs-White, which led to the ball being fed to the right-hand side, for Bakwa, who hit a first-time curling shot towards the far post, and that was well saved by Dubravka. And then there was another really fluid passing move, which ended up with Nikola Milenkovic high up the pitch and feeding a through ball into the box for Chris Wood. He hit a shot on the turn, but it was straight at the keeper. But that was a sign there, George, I think, of Ange ball and the positives of it, because I don't think Forest really ever looked that fluid under Nuno at times.
Yeah, you're right. On the chances, I think Wood couldn't have done much more with it. It comes at him quickly. He's turning. It's right at his feet, and he's got a few milliseconds to hit it before the defender gets across. So maybe he could have got it into the bottom right corner. Not much he could have done with that. And yeah, Bakwa, really his first real involvement in the game. To be fair, good save from Dubravka. But yeah, you're right. It was both very crisp moves. There was a lot of that didn't quite get to the goal. Chris passing around the halfway line, and then Forest got stuck and had to slow it down. So they're, like I said, they're Premier League quality players. They've got a lot in their locker. They can play different styles, different ways. And them playing that way has almost came effortlessly, particularly against Swansea. I know the championship opposition, but not just the 2 goals we scored. There was a lot of that, one-touch passing into space, around the markers, and it does look really good. And like I said, there are elements of Ange ball I do really like, and that is one that I do like because it shows the best of Anderson, of Gibbs-White, of Louise, who are good in tight spaces, very good when they're all close to each other. So, yeah, no, that's a certain positive to the way that Ange has got us to play. I'd just rather it be Louise in midfield than Zinchenko.
And finally, to wrap up this first half, we'll talk about the chance that Burnley had. A free kick, which was smashed towards goal by Chauna, and it comes off the crossbar. Matt Sells nowhere near it. If it's on target, it's a goal. I think Sells was relieved to see that one bounce to safety, and so too the travelling Forest fans, because that could have been 2-1 at half-time, and having been on top and create some really good chances, Forest could have easily found themselves down at the break.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've not actually seen the challenge back. I was a bit unsure in real time whether it actually was a free kick. But yeah, a really good strike. I liked the fact that Sells stayed his side. I think we saw Leeds scored a goal, didn't they? And this weekend they fired it straight at Jose Sarr's side and he didn't cover it. So I always like when keepers stick to their side. And if it goes in the other side over the wall, then you hold your hands up to a really good free kick. We were close to that. But luckily from a Forest perspective, it just crashed the inside of the bar, then didn't bounce to a Burnley player, because I thought once it's fell in that direction, Sells is obviously sprawled on the floor. Anything could happen. Anybody could get to it. So luckily Forest got that away. I don't know who cleared it as well, but you saw Milenkovic and Morato cope really well with a lot of balls coming into the box. And a lot of people thought maybe Milenkovic can't play in this Ange system with a higher line, but he's the one that's commanding it, that's telling Morato, Williams, Zinchenko when he's there, when to push up, when to drop back. And a few balls over the top from the keeper. I think early in the second half, there was a ball all the way from Dubravka towards Lau Foster. Well, Milenkovic outpaced him, got there first, put it out for a throw-in. So I think he is adapting really well to Ange ball and perhaps a lot better than we thought.
Yep, and we'll pick up a bit more on the second half in a few moments' time. But it was 1-1 at the break.
The 1865 Match Report.
As a scientist, I can tell you that Sundays are only 24 hours long. But with NFL Sunday Ticket and YouTube TV, you get every game every Sunday all in one place. That's upwards of 30 hours of NFL in one day. How can there be 30 hours in 24 hours, you ask? I have a theory. Magic. New users get NFL Sunday Ticket for 8 payments of $34.50 per month. Sign up at NFLSundayTicket.com. Local and national games on YouTube TV. NFL Sunday Ticket for out-of-market games excludes digital-only games and commercial use. Terms and embargoes apply. Availability varies.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
Welcome back to this 1865 match report as we look back on Forest's draw at Burnley. So it was 1-1 at half time, George. No substitutions made by either team at the break. And in the opening stages of the second half, Forest conceded a chance, and it was a ball over the top to Jadon Anthony, him again. Thankfully, he didn't score this time, but he was proving to be a bit of a thorn in our side at times.
Yeah, well, I mentioned at the top of the show the awful stadium. It took the whole of half time for me to go to the toilet and come back. So this chance was happening just as I was walking up the stairs and then trying to watch what was happening over my shoulder while I was trying not to bang into anybody. So I sort of saw half of it, but we were just asleep. I'm really not sure what happened there. One ball over the top, cut everybody out, Sells bails us out, and then it's a scramble to get back on the ball and somehow they get it clear. So yeah, it was a very worrying start to the second half. I mean, I suppose Burnley started the second half how we started the first half, showing intent, and that's how Scott Parker likes to play as well. I think he managed Burnley really well on the day. Obviously, they considered a few chances, but they played probably a higher line than we're expecting, and than they did against Liverpool, certainly, to try and compress that midfield when Forest had the ball in and around the halfway line to keep them as far away as possible. And I think the fact that Forest didn't really have much pace in the starting lineup helped that as well. So yeah, Scott Parker set them up well, and I think they were always a threat. That's what they reminded Forest. They didn't really build on that and force ourselves into anything else in the second half. But yeah, I think it woke Forest up and made them realise that we've got a game to go and win here. And they did kick on from there. Obviously didn't win the game in the end, but it was good to get out of jail there right early on.
And it became quite an open match in that second half. Forest had a chance with Chris Wood, an opportunity at the near post, first time effort, which he put just wide. Good positioning, but just couldn't quite find the finish. And then just before the hour mark, Callum Hudson-Odoi came on to replace Bakwa. And as the game went on, Forest seemed to take more control of it and looked the stronger team and the team most likely to find another goal. We then had a few more changes. Chris Wood replaced by Igor Jesus, and Ndoye replaced by Ibrahim Sangare, and Douglas Luiz replaced by Callum Wendo. And it was actually Jesus, one of the replacements, who came close for Forest. He got a glancing header which was flying towards the far corner of the Burnley net, but Dubravka got across and kept it out. It was quite soon after he came on as well, wasn't it? Almost an immediate impact from the Brazilian, who does look quite lively in Ange's system, it has to be said.
Yeah, he does. He does, and all of his subs, I think, had a positive impact. And you mentioned it was a good game. It's a very different game to what we expect under Nuno. And I said to you before we start recording that under Nuno would have probably gone there, created two chances, scored them both, and won 2-1. We create a lot more chances than we would have against Ange. Yes, under Ange. Yes, we conceded more, but it depends how you like to watch football. And I think even if you prefer a more attacking style, it's so different. We're so used to Forest being rigid, tight at the back, effective going forward, clinical when going forward, that this new system, even if you are a fan of it, you're still a bit like, I'm not sure. So yeah, it was a really good game. I agree with the subs. I think it was the right time to make them. And obviously, Nuno, towards the end, particularly in that last game, almost seemed to sabotage us by being stubborn and not making them. But I like the fact that Ange used the bench. We've got the squad to do that now. And a lot of when we were making changes last season, if things weren't going our way, you couldn't really take Elanga or Hudson-Odoi off because Sousa and Jota were far inferior. You couldn't take Gibbs-White off because we didn't have another number 10. Obviously, McAtee didn't come on in the end to replace Morgan, but we've got very similar players on the bench that are fit, fired and ready to go. I want to talk about Dan Ndoye as well before we get to the Jesus chance, because I am really struggling to see what he offers us. I know he's got a goal and an assist so far, but to me, he has no pace. He has no strength really, and for he looks like a big guy, but he gets shrugged off the ball quite easily. I know he's against Kyle Walker yesterday, and that's a tough challenge. He doesn't really beat a man, and yeah, like I said, yesterday it was tough because the wingers didn't really get any support from the fullbacks. They were having to come inside. But I've seen Bakwa for sub against Arsenal, half the game against Swansea and a little bit against Burnley. And I know exactly what he offers. He's direct, left-footed, likes to drive at people, likes to take people on. I just can't see what Ndoye's strength is. And maybe that's him adapting to the league. Hopefully it will come. But I think at the minute, for me, and Hutchinson had a sort of 45-minute cameo at Swansea. For me, he would be the fourth choice winger at the minute. And I was surprised that Hutchinson didn't come on. And yeah, the subs really made a difference. Ange drove us on. Hudson-Odoi, the first one to bring the sort of new energy, then Callum Wendo and Jesus. And I think with them both coming on, you wondered who would go where. I thought Callum Wendo would go up front and Jesus on the wing, but he swapped it round and worked well, good ball in. And Jesus was unlucky there. It was a very good header. And I think that's probably Dubravka's best saves. He's very different to Chris Wood. He makes loads of runs. If you watch him, he's always on the move, nip in between the centre-backs, making runs. And I like that from a striker. because a lot of them, they sort of do that and then they don't get the ball, they get frustrated and they stop making the runs. But he was always on the move. No, I've not got the ball. Okay, get back onside, look for it again. And I really liked that. I said at the top of the show, I'm not sure whether he's ready to start yet. I think we've got to stick with Wood for now, try and get him scoring. And, Backwell looked good against Swansea and from the bench, but he started and didn't really have much of an impact. So I think there's still time for him to adapt to the Premier League, and he's a really good option from the bench. So yeah, I think Ange showed our strength in depth very well, and I think we were unfortunate in the end not to get the victory.
That Jesus chance came from a good cross in by Elliot Anderson. Another cross from him shortly afterwards led to another big Forest opportunity, and it fell to Neco Williams, who hit a first-time drive again from the edge of the box, and he could have had a brace, of all people, Neco, but it was another good save from Dubravka low down to palm the ball away. And at this point, Forest were piling on the pressure, and if any team was going to score, then it was going to be Forest. And Forest continued to push. Hartman had to make a block from Calamendo, and I think by this point, with the rain lashing down, Burnley were just looking at the clock and hoping for the final whistle. And in the end, it did come. The game finished 1 apiece. And on the face of it, I think Forest will be disappointed with the point on the basis of the chances that they created. And through a combination of a bit of wasteful finishing and some good goalkeeping, they weren't able to score more goals and get the win. But like you said at the top of the report, George, any point in the Premier League away from home is a good one. So we can't grumble too much when you've got a point on the road against tricky opposition in Burnley.
Yeah, definitely. I think by the end we were creating chances, but I actually thought that this is going to peter out into a draw. We just didn't look like we had the clinical edge that maybe we had under Nuno, and that's because we didn't create many chances and we still found a way to score goals. So when you create more and don't score as many, then it does look quite bad. I mean, the last 2 games we've probably created, I don't know, maybe 15 shots on target from Swansea and Burnley, and we've scored 3. So that's not really Forest stats over the years. Normally we sort of created 5 and scored 3. So I think that will come. There's only so long that you can say, oh, we're playing well, we're creating chances, we're not sticking them away. But because we're so early on in Ange's tenure, I think you've got to rely on the fact that will come. But yeah, really good point from Forest. Obviously, it's not a fantastic point because before the game, you were probably expecting Forest to go and get the victory because they've got far better calibre of players. And like I said, if Nuno was in charge, I think you'd expect nothing more than a win. I think if we didn't win under Nuno, you would be very disappointed because you'd back Forest to beat a side that's just got promoted. And last season, I'm pretty sure there might be one that they didn't, but I think they beat every newly promoted side home and away. So yeah, professional point. Forest didn't lose. That's the main thing. We saw at Swansea, they looked destined to win the game, and they conceded 2 late goals and threw it away. They didn't crumble. They held their own defensively in the second half after that Sells save. They looked solid. Like I say, Morato, I thought played quite solid and dealt with everything that came his way. So there's plenty of positives to take, a few negatives and concerns as well. But hopefully, like I said, they'll be ironed out. And, I think everybody now is just going to park that Burnley game and absolutely cannot wait for this game. Real Betis away. For, I don't know, maybe 5,000 people that are travelling, everybody watching at home, to have Forest back in Europe, to have a manager who, yes, we're not sure about, but has been in Europe the last 3 years, has coped with that day-to-day sort of pressure in terms of training, playing, not much training sessions, more just recovery. I think it's so exciting, and I just cannot wait to get on that plane on Tuesday.
Yeah, let's have a little look ahead to that game in midweek. First time in 30 years Forest are going to be playing in Europe. It's a fantastic time for the club, even though we are under a new manager and there's a lot of upheaval at the moment because of that. Yeah, this is a real opportunity to make a bit of history. How are you feeling ahead of the game and Forest chances of doing something in Seville?
I feel a lot of things, actually. You mentioned Nuno there. I think it is a little sad that this feels like Nuno's achievement, and he's not going to be stood there enjoying it. We're not going to be having Madras and Stellas with him. It is a bit of a shame, but I think we've got to relish it. In terms of the game as well, you look at some of the teams in the competition, maybe only Porto we could have had as a more difficult game away from home. So it is a bloody tough game. Manuel Pellegrini is a very good manager. They got to the Conference League final last year. They're a very decent side. I think they're 6th in La Liga at the minute as well. They're in good form. So it's not going to be an easy game, but I think we've got to relish the experience. And I think it's almost been lost as well, the achievement of Forest getting to Europe, because when we first had it, I think even I and everybody was disappointed because it could and probably should have been Champions League. Then we had the whole legal debacle that overshadowed it. And then when we were just about to get excited about it, we had the upheaval of Nuno and things like that. So there's not really been a time where we've sort of been excited for it and been ready for it, apart from maybe the 24 hours where we got the draw and then the games were all announced. And then we went and lost to West Ham and that burst the bubble. So, yeah, I really can't wait to just get in the zone of being happy that Forest are in Europe, are back in Europe after 30 years, and a place where me growing up going to Preston at home in midweek and losing 3-0 on a school night, never dreamed that we'd be here. So, yeah, I really can't wait. And hopefully we can work some magic.
Fingers crossed. And yeah, I hope you enjoy your trip in midweek, George. It's going to be a fantastic experience, whatever the result. Forest back in Europe and 5,000 plus travelling over to Spain. It's going to be a very special occasion indeed. Thanks, George, for joining me for this match report. Thank you as well, listener. We will have a match report after the Real Betis game in midweek, and then we will also have our report after the Sunderland game next weekend. So make sure you join us for those. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you soon.
You've been listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and leave us a review. It helps other listeners find our content.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Doug. Here we have the Limu Emu in its natural habitat, helping people customize their car insurance and save hundreds with Liberty Mutual. Fascinating. It's accompanied by his natural ally, Doug.
Limu, is that guy with the binoculars watching us?
Cut the camera. They see us.
Only pay for what you need at libertymutual.com.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Savings vary. Underwritten by Liberty Mutual Insurance Company and affiliates. Excludes Massachusetts.